Who wants to go next? I think Leslie, do you want to speak? Or Patrick? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So, well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's very kind of you. It's a privilege being here in Melbourne, the other great city in Australia. It's a vast subject, relations between Australia, Europe, and Asia. It's impossible to talk about everything that is related to that, but it would be, I think, really preposterous from us in saying that Australia would be only a portal or a way of going into Asia. I think, and I have the privilege of spending a lot of time in your country, that you have infinitely more. You are, of course, a portal to Asia, but you have infinitely more to offer than that as well. What is interesting for us, if I may say, in many ways, economic, political, strategic, and cultural, because everything is linked, as you well know, is the fact that you have a genuine culture, a genuine personal Australian approach to things, to art, to politics, to relationship. It's so, I mean, considering just Australia as a gateway to Asia, it's a question mark, of course. The relations of Europe and Asia dates back hundreds of years. Some of our countries have been here for a very, very long time here in Asia. I mean, the British, of course, where the British went, the French went as well, the Dutch have 200, 300, 400 years kind of relationship with some Asian countries, the Spanish as well, in the Philippines and elsewhere, the Germans even in some regions. So the relations between Europe and Asia dates back more than 10 centuries, honestly. I will speak for my own country. I mean, the oldest report of a probable trip between Europe and China was made by a Flemish monk in the 11th century. It hasn't been proven, but apparently Rusbroek, was his name, was the first one to bring back a report of his contacts to Asia. So, I mean, Europe, if it was only to have a contact with Asia, would not need anybody, to be honest. But through the eyes of Australia, through the uniqueness of your society, of your culture, of your experience, because you have much more links now, and you developed that very quickly, you have much more links than we have to Asia. Not only because of your business, but because of your geographic situation, but also because of the changing structure, demographic structure of your country. I mean, it's sufficient to walk anywhere. I mean, it's obvious that your country is also an Asian country, not only because of your geography, but also about the population. I mean, I suppose that something like 10% maybe of the Australian proud Australians are from Asian origins, which is most probably much more than what any country in Europe, bar possibly Britain, would be able to claim. So we have a multifaceted relationship with Asia, and we have to develop it in new ways. I have had the privilege of working in Asia and studying in China for a while and working over there and in other Asian countries. Actually, I've spent my whole career in Asia. And the relationship between Asia and European countries, not Europe as such, is sometimes extremely heavy, because we have a very heavy history about it. Not always a happy one, to put it mildly. Australia has to offer a new kind of relationship, and can, in that sense, be a very useful bridge, or link rather than a bridge, because a bridge is just, you just walk on a bridge. I mean, you are a link because you multiply the factor of possibility, the factors, you multiply the possibilities of interacting between the two. A few words about possibly economy, but I'm not going to bore you to death about that. Europe-Asia business is the largest in the world, by far. And that's why one created a beautiful thing which is called by the name of ASEM, that very few people have heard about. But ASEM means actually correct me if I'm wrong, David, Asia+Europe meeting. It's very exciting as a, and it's exactly what it is. It's just a meeting every 2 years, but it's just the second largest meeting in the world after the UN General the UN, the General Assembly of the United Nations. It brings together the 27 EU countries and most of the countries in Asia. It was not normal to anybody, to starting to Australia, but that Australia and New Zealand were left aside of this whole process. And we were very happy to contribute to the fact that that Australia and New Zealand became part of the process in a record time. Usually it takes, 3 or 4 years to get into this kind of cozy relationship. It took a bit more than a year, I think. And of course, Australia became a member of this organization in 1 year, in 2010, but of course in the Asian side, it's obvious that Australia is an Asian country. So I mean, Australia should become an Asian member of this organization, which comprised, I mean, I'm not going to go into details, but comprised of 2 groups, the European ones and the Asian ones. Big problem would be Russia. Is Russia Asian? Is Russia European? Of course, it's both. I mean, I leave that to specialists to enjoy that for the next 20 years to decide if they are Asian or Europeans. But the most important part is Australia is part of the ASEM and is part of the ASEM on the Asian side and not the European one. And that was done with the unanimous support of the European Union and the countries of the European Union. As far as art is concerned, we have had it. Europe is, of course, one entity, but it's the richness of that, is the diversity of it. You couldn't even say that there are 27, soon 28 countries. You have to go much more in detail than that. In many countries, you have substructures, and I know what I'm talking about as a Belgian, which also have their role to play. The European Union for us, and I'm sorry, I hope I'm not too long, but the European Union for us has been the possibility for a lot of sub-national structure to flourish. Structures that were under control, let's put it that way, under a strict traditional national state. European Union was a possibility for a lot of substructures in Italy, in Britain, let's talk about Scotland and Wales and so on and so forth, about my own country, to re-establish themselves as a cultural power, let's put it that way, and a decision power. So in fact, I mean, we are talking about more than 27 actors in the European Union, far more than that. In our case, for example, what we call the region, we would call that states here in Australia, are the ones who are in charge of culture, and rightly so. Because what defines culture for us, the first thing that defines culture is your language. Because language defines you and defines the rest of your view on the world. Learning another language gives you an opening to another, not only a communication tool, but also an opening to another culture you will know that. So that's very important. And that's where Australia also plays a role. With your new demographic structure and with all the efforts you make into learning Asian languages, I understand it has been a priority of the Australian government in the last few years. I mean, that's, it's really something, you have a head start on anybody else on that one, if I may say. And that's up to you to seize the opportunity on learning these languages of the future, right, quite honestly. And that's something that Australia is able to bring, not only on the economic or political side, but also on understanding each other and on the cultural side. Your culture is not European anymore. Of course, it's defined, the substructure, the most important. You are clearly an Anglo-Saxon country. It's obvious. I mean, by your culture, by your language, by your political structure, by the way you're doing things, by the fact that you are an extremely democratic country, if I may say so, the arch democracy, if I may say, most probably in this part of the world. And that's something you have to be proud of. But also by the fact that you have so many immigrants, that you have so much business with Asia. Australia is a country of the OECD, which is the group of developing countries, which has the most important trade with China. China represents something like 2.3% of your GDP, which is infinitely more than any other developing country, which means it's not only business, it's people-to-people relations. And that's the best way to develop cultural links. It's not that much signing grand, how should I put it, treaties and declaration and things like that. It's people-to-people relations. It's you going to Asia. And one of the great Australian traditions is your sabbatical years. I mean, I've always been extremely jealous about that, actually. But I mean, the fact that you have young Australians all over the place is most probably much more important for you to be part of the truly Asian century. That will be most probably the key of the development of this country in the 21st century, with keeping your heritage. And it's not only a heritage, because the heritage is something which is dead, and the European culture is anything but dead, honestly. That would be an enormous mistake to make. But also, I mean, making this kind of link with Asia because of your, maybe because of your geographic situation, but I would like to say that the perception of your closeness is more important than the reality. You take, correct me if I'm wrong, 13 hours to fly from Sydney or Melbourne to Beijing. You would fly faster from Brussels. Geographically speaking, Brussels is closer to Asia than Australia is. It's a matter of belonging, of effort, of openness, and it's not a matter necessarily of geography. That's how you want to make it, how you want to profile yourself, how you want to be part of this 21st century, which will be an Asian one. Don't want to go much more into detail, and I thank you for your patience. Thank you very much.